Is exercise 6.8, solving trig equations. And the first question says to solve from 0 through to, so in other words, theta lies between 0 and 360. Remember, 0 and 360 is just one revolution going around the circle, okay? Okay, so cos of theta equals -1/2. So I probably shouldn't have drawn that diagram. But where is cos negative in which quadrant? So there are 3 steps you have to follow. 3 steps. First thing is we say which quadrants. So cos theta is negative in, so this is step 1. Really important. 3 steps. Cos theta is negative in quadrants what and what? 2 and 3. And then the next step's really important. Remember when we're in those quadrants, I'm really only interested in the acute angle. So the acute angle theta. Now, the negative is only tells you the quadrants. When, for this is an exact value, it's fine. But for other questions, there won't be an exact value and you have to put it in your calculator to work out what it is. So the negative tells me the quadrants. That's from the negative sign. Now, cos of what is +1/2? Don't worry about the -1/2. Cos of what is 1/2? Cos of 60. So the acute angle theta is 60. So this is set it out for me. It's telling me quadrants 2 and 3, 60-degree angle. 60 in quadrant 2, 60 in quadrant 3. This is really the best way to do it. Now just tell me how big those angles are. However, if you don't, look, I do prefer that you draw it, but if you didn't draw it, you know that the acute angle is 60, that you're in quadrants 2 and 3. Isn't always quadrant 2 angle, haven't we got theta 180 minus theta 180 plus theta 360 minus theta? See, we've got that, but how do you say quadrant 2? Isn't it 180 plus minus 60? And quadrant 3 is 180 plus 60. But I prefer just to use the diagram. Using the diagram, my quadrant 2 answer, that's obviously 120, and my quadrant 3 answer, that's obviously 180 plus 60. Can you see it in the diagram? So that's 120, and this is 240. Okay, but the diagram just makes it so visual. All right, the next one, got to be really careful with the next one. I might actually move it up because I don't need all that space for the first question. So, √3 tan squared x is equal to -1 equals 0. So this needs to be written in the form of an equation. Tan squared x equals what? Take it over. What do you got? √3 tan squared x equals 1. So tan squared x equals 1 on √3. Now, see this? Going back to the first question, it's just cos of something is a number. We'll do the quadrants. I'll have to do a positive one in a minute too. All right? I have to do another one of these for you. All right. So √3 tan squared x minus 1 is 0. So tan squared x is 1 on √3. How do I find tan x? Isn't it plus or minus? Sorry, I made a bit of a mistake here. Can you keep this as a 3, please? 3. This is a 3. This is a 3. Thank you. So what does tan of x equal? Plus or minus the square root of 1 on 3, which is plus or minus 1 on √3. So if the squared of something is a third, then tan of x is plus or minus. Do you remember when you find the square root? If x squared is something, or whatever, if something squared is something, you take plus or minus to the other side. Now, what does this tell me about my quadrants? Okay, let's go like this. So tan of x is plus or minus 1 on √3. Well, haven't I got 2 options here? Tan of x is 1 on √3, or tan of x is -1 on √3. I'll solve them separately for you, but you can later on. But what we really should be doing is doing them all in one go. What quadrants is this? Quadrant 1 and? So tan of x, yes, I know it's 1 on √3, but I'm just interested, is tan of x positive or negative first? Tan of x is positive, quadrants 1 and 3. Tan of x is negative, what quadrants? 2 and 4. So when you go back and see tan of x is plus or minus 1 on root 3, you don't need to do that. You just say all 4 quadrants, because tan of x is positive in 2 of them, and tan of x is negative in 2 of them. So I'm just going to say all 4 quadrants. Now that was my step 1. But from now on, you don't need to say that. From here, you just say x lies in all 4 quadrants. Do you understand why? So remember, step 1 is the quadrants. Step 2, the acute angle. Acute angle x. Tan of what is 1 on root 3? Tan of 30. So here comes my diagram now. I know I'm in all 4 quadrants, 30 degrees. See how I'm doing my little... Now, if you draw the diagram, you don't have to show all the working out. But if you don't draw the diagram, you'd have to go like this. Now, this is not theta this time, all right? It's angle x, because tan of x is those. So first step, look at the sign. Which quadrants is it in? Is tan x positive or is it negative? If it's plus or minus, it's all 4 quadrants for any ratio. Then tan of what gives me 1 on root 3? The acute angle, tan of 30. So I draw my 4 quadrants, 30. So what is x? How do I get to it? It's 30. That one we know is 150, but how do you do it? 180 minus 30. The next one we know will be what? How would I write it? 180 plus 30. So the people that don't like to draw diagrams, they write all this out. They go 30, 180 minus, 180 plus. What's the last one? 360 minus. But you know, if you draw the diagram, you don't need to write that out. You just go like this, 30, 150, 210, and 360 short 30 is 330. So whenever you've got a squared, you will end up with all 4 quadrants, 4 answers. So what you could do, actually, is get your calculators out, and let's have a look at our first 2 questions and see how we've gone. So, what I might do for this first question as well while I'm here, because I don't know if you've got a bit of room, but I do. I've got a bit of room. I'm just going to solve the equation cos theta is positive a half just over here. Let's say I asked you to solve cos theta is positive a half. What's our first step? Step 1, which quadrants? Cos theta is positive in which quadrants? In quadrants 1 and 4. What's the acute angle? The acute angle, cos of 60 is a half. Draw the diagram. Quadrants 1 and 4, 60, 60. What are my answers? So step 1 is which quadrants are you in? Step 2 is what's the acute angle? Step 3 is the answer. Forgot to say that. Step 3 is the answers. So step 3 is, what are your answers? 60 and 360 minus 60. In other words, 60 and 300. See now, look at the difference between cos theta is negative a half answers. They're quadrants 2 and 4 answers. And cos theta is a half answers. They've both got acute angle 60. They're quadrants 1 and 4 answers. Can you see? Now, what I want you to do, go to your calculator, make sure you're in degrees mode. Go in and enter cos of 120. You should get negative a half. Enter cos of 240. You should get negative a half. Enter cos of 60. You should get positive a half. And cos of 300. You should also get positive a half. What are we doing in these equations? We're solving for theta. We're working out what theta is. Call this one question 1a. This can be question 1b. Cos theta is negative a half. Just showing the 4 quadrants. But quadrant 2 is quite different. When you've got the squared and you've got to do plus or minus the square root, you end up with all the 4 quadrants. So if on your calculator you, for example, for 1a, you go cos of 120, you'll get negative a half as an answer. Cos of 240, you'll get negative a half as an answer. Over here, question 1b, cos of 60 will give you positive a half. Cos of 300 will give you positive a half. Now, for question 2, if you do 3, well, with these we can see, look, you could substitute it into that, but there's no need to. There are going to be 4 answers because you've got 4 quadrants, but they will all work as well. All right. Sine x equals negative root 3 on 2. Notice how x is defined differently. It's not from 0 to 360. Sine of x equals negative root 3 on 2. But this time we're not talking 0 to 360. We're talking negative 180 to positive 180. Now, I'm going to write this out again. You know negative 180 to positive 180. That's from negative 180 to 0 and then from 0 to 180. Now, when I look at it on my diagram, it is still 1 revolution, but I only go from 0 to 180. So 0, 90, 180, they're my positive angles. Got it? Positive angles, right? When I want from 0 to negative 180, sorry, I'll go this way now. 0 to negative 180, I have to travel this way, don't I? 0, negative 90, this is called negative 180 for my negative angles. So, I still have the 4 quadrants because 0 to 180 is quadrants 1 and 2 and 0 to negative 180 is quadrants 4 and 3 in order. It's just that instead of going, so the only difference is instead of going 0 to 360 without stopping, that's when I have to give my answers, as in question 1, I have to give my answers from 0 to 360. So it tells you, go around the circle and don't stop. 1 full revolution, don't stop. Same with this one. Question 2 was also from 0 to 360, right? I didn't write it, but it was. But question 3 is different. It's saying go from 0 to 180, stop, and go from 0 to negative 180, stop. Okay, but all the rest of the rules apply. You're just writing your answer differently. Step 1 and step 2 are the same, all right? So what's step 1 telling me? Quadrants. Sine is what, positive or negative? Negative in quadrants 3 and 4. Oh, you know what? Can I change the question? I just wanted to put, oh, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's all right. No, leave it. I'll just do another one. Sine is negative in quadrants 3 and 4. I wanted 1 there, 1 here. But can I make it cos? Can I make it cos? Because I want, so cos x is negative in quadrants 2 and 3, isn't it? Quadrants 2 and 3. Okay, what have we got? So, and what's the acute? So remember the quadrants. Step 2, the acute angle. Acute angle x. Cos, don't worry about the negative. Ignore the negative. And don't put it in your calc. Cos of what is root 3 on 2? Cos of 30. So, all right, I know I've got an acute angle of 30 and I'm in quadrants 2 and 3. Draw them in. 30, 30. The only difference is the way you report your answer at the end. You're only allowed to go from 0 to 180 and from 0 to negative 180. You're not allowed to give an answer of 210. That's out of the domain. It's out of the allowed values. So, what's my first answer? You can see it there. So, x is 180 minus 30. See, this is where I would prefer just to write the answer. How are you going to call this one, do you remember? I'd just rather say it's negative 150 instead of going, but do you know how to do it the other way? You go negative 180 plus 30. How do you get to that line? You go negative 180, but that's why you don't need to do this step above if you've got the diagram. See, look at this. That's 150, and this is negative 150 because it's going in the negative direction. So you don't need the line before, you just need the bottom line. Now, on your calculator, if you do the cos of 150, you'll get something yucky like 0.866, but square it. Now be careful, you get a negative answer, don't you, when you do it? But square it, it's going to become positive, but it's really negative. And when you square it, you get 3/4. And cos of negative 150, try cos of negative 150 on your calc. You'll get negative 0.8666. We know that that 0.866 from now is root 3 on 2. If you square it, you'll get positive 3/4, but that's because you just squared a negative. But the answer still is negative. Next type. We're not finished with the types. Plenty of types. Right, sine of 2x, be very careful with this. Sine of 2x equals a half. Now what I want you to do, normally we've just got x or theta here, but this time we got 2x. That's okay. Just call sine of that is a half. Let's just follow the rules. Don't worry about, there's a difference here in the very last step. So, sine is what? Isn't step 1 always quadrants? All right, quadrants is always first. Sine is what? Positive or negative in this case? Positive in quadrants 1 and 2. But we want the sine of 2x here. Let's just, before we actually go any further, I need to do something. The sine of 2x equals that. This domain is only for x. So x lies from 0 to 360. 2x means, haven't I just multiplied that by 2? So I must multiply 0 by 2 is 0. 360 times 2 is 720. That is my new domain. All right, so this is the domain for x. This is the domain for 2x. Do you see that? Be very careful. Sine of 2x is a half. For x, for 0, x lying between 0 and 360, that means that 2x lies between, so multiplying everything by 2, 2x lies between 0 and 720. You know what that tells me? Go twice around the circle. Twice around the circle. That's what we've got to do when we come to get the solution. So, all right. So if you see this with a 2x, not an x squared means this, sine squared x would mean square root. That's different. What's my next thing? So acute angle 2x, not acute angle x. No. Sine of what? The what is 2x. Sine of what is a half? 30. So acute angle 2x is 30 degrees. Not acute angle x, the 2x itself. See how I've circled it? The acute angle of that's 30. So now let's start writing up my solutions. So that means that 2x could be, before I do that, I better draw my quadrants. I've got 30 and I've got 30. All right, let's start. We've got to go all the way to 720. Right, what do we got first? This is 0, go. What's my first answer? 2x is 30. This is what 2x is. Isn't sine of 30 a half? So it makes sense that 2x is 30. What's my next answer? 150. And then I come back there to 360. And then my next one would be 360 plus 30. And the next one is just 360 plus 150. Does that make sense? So I have to go twice around the circle. On my first time around the circle, I go 30, 150. And then I keep going back to 360 plus 30 and then 360 plus the 150. Does this make sense? So you'll use your first two answers and add 360 onto each of those. That means that 2x is 30, 150, 390 and 510. That's what 2x is. So last step is to divide through by 2. That means x is 15. Does it make sense? It does make sense because 2 times 15 is 30. Sine of 30 is a half. X is 150 divided by 2 is 75. Watching. 2 times 75 is 150. We know that the sine of 150 is also a half. The next one is 390 divided by 2. That would be 195. And 510 divided by 2 is 255 degrees. That's what x is. Quadrants yet because it's tan squared. So if tan squared 3 theta equals 3, then the tan of 3 theta equals plus or minus the square root of 3. So which quadrants are we in? Step 1. All 4. All 4 quadrants. So I need to see all 4 quadrants. And always the next step is acute angle. Is it acute angle theta or tan of that? Acute angle 3 theta. So tan of that is root 3. What is that? So tan of 3 theta is root 3. 3 theta must be 60. That's the acute angle. All 4 quadrants. So it's telling us what to do. You've got an acute angle of 60 in all the 4 quadrants. Draw it. And read them off. But you have to go 3 times around. So therefore your solutions for 3 theta, not for theta, your solutions for 3 theta are, what's the first one? 60, then 120, and then 120 and 60 is 240 and 300. Now what do you do with each of those numbers? Add 360 onto each. So what's 360 and 60? 420. What's 360 and... So actually, look, I'll show you the setting out, first one. So then you'll do 360 plus 60, 360 plus 120, 360 plus 240, got it? 360 plus 300, not done. Now instead of going 360 plus 360, let's add 720. Do you get it? So that's twice around the circle. Then we've got 720 plus 60, 720 plus 120, 720 plus 240, 720 plus 300. Now that's still 3 theta. Once I get those answers, I have to divide them by 3. So I've got, what have I got? 3 theta is 60, 120, 240, 300, 36, 420, 480, I hope, 5, 600, 660, 780, 840, 960, and 1020, yeah? They're the 3 thetas. So I'm solving, oh sorry, going back up here, what I just forgot to write, if theta lies between 0 and 360, we know we're going 3 times around the circle. 0 less than or equal to theta less than or equal to 1080, 3 times. Yeah. So you should always put that. Oh, and that's a 3 theta. 3 theta. That's the domain for theta. This is the domain for 3 theta. Okay. So, geez, if you hit a 3 theta with a squared, then you're going to have 12 answers. But 12? Yeah. Because it would be 4. If it's a squared, you have 4 answers. If it's just a complete revolution. Because it's all 4 quadrants. And then when you throw in the 3 theta, you go 3 times around. So now, divide them all by 3, and we get 20, 40, 80, 100? 440, come on, 160, 200, 220, I hope I'm right, 60, 280, 320, and 340, yeah, it would just be 20 more than that. Because it goes up by 20, and then by 40, then by 20. 20, 40, 20, goes up by 20, by 40, by 20. See how you can see it from the first pattern? Alright? And there are your 12 solutions. 180 is less than or equal to theta is less than or equal to 180. Now before we start, my question is cos of 2 theta equals that, so I need to fix this up. So I've got 2 theta. You're going to like this one. Multiply by 2, what do you get? Negative 360. Multiply by 2, you get 2 theta. Multiply by 2, you get 360. In other words, I want one circle from 0 to 360, full circle. One circle from 0 to negative 360, full circle. 8 answers. No, not 8 answers. We'll see. No, only 4, I think. Now, cos of 2 theta, so I still have to do 2 revolutions, but I don't do them keep going round. I do 1 revolution anti-clockwise, and then I'll do the other one anti-clockwise. All right, but I'll draw them in a minute. All right, let's do our steps. So we've defined, we've got to go from 0 to 3. You know, 0 lies between negative 360 and 360, you know. You've got to pass through 0. So, step 1, what's the acute angle? Acute angle And I forgot my quadrants, but doesn't matter. Acute angle 2 theta is what? Cos of what? 45. And step 2, which is really step 1, quadrants. Quadrants. Cos is positive, quadrants. 1 and 4, that's where cos is positive. So can we see that? We look at that, we see two things, really. We say cos of 2 theta is positive. Cos is positive in quadrants 1 and 4. Then we say the acute angle, I know that the acute angle 2 theta would be 45. So I'm going to draw my things. So I've got quadrants 1 and 4, 45. Okay, we have to name it in the positive direction from 0 to 360, that way, and we've got to do it the other way. So let's go positive angles first. So theta equals, so I'm going from 0 to 360 positive, let's go. What have I got? 45, what else? And 315. Thank you. 2 theta is 45 and 360 minus 45, which is 315. They're my positive angles, so I'm just going to go here. These are my positive angles, but now I have to do my negative ones. So same two answers, but negative. What have I got? Negative 45. And so I went this way first. But now I have to go the other way. One sec. So now I have to go this way. Negative 45 and there. Oh, too far. All right. Oh, that's a mess. So I did my positive ones like that and like that. Now my negative ones, negative 45 and negative 315. That's what 2 theta is. So they're my negative angles. So therefore, what do I do now? I just divide. Theta is 22.5 degrees. 157.5 degrees. Negative 22.5 degrees. Negative 157.5 degrees. Now, let's just stop. Look at the original domain and look at the 2 theta domain. Notice your domain for 2 theta, all your 2 theta angles lie within 0 and 360 and 0 and negative 360. Can you see that? And when you divide by 2, you're going back to your domain for theta. Notice that all your theta results lie between 0 and 180, can you see? And 0 and negative 180. They fit. All right? So when you're doing your 2 theta ones, you've got to make sure do these fit into the 2 theta domain, so it's important to write it out. Okay? All right, now, another question, last one. 4 sine squared 3 theta, oh, horrible, equals 3. 12 answers again. So let's rearrange. Sine squared 3 theta equals 3/4. Sine of 3 theta is, go, plus or minus, sine squared, plus or minus root 3 onto all 4 quadrants. Okay, wait a sec. It's actually not as many times as round as you. Negative 180, less than or equal to theta, less than or equal to 180. So that's another question. I want 3 theta, so you're actually not going 3 times around the circle. You're going, it's not as bad as what you think. Sorry, there isn't 12 answers. It's because we're going, well, there might be. I think there is. I don't know, maybe 6. What do I do? What's 3 times 540? Negative 540. How many times around the circle? If that's 180 is half, what are 3 lots of a half? Whatever. You go 1.5 one way and 1.5 the other way. It is 3 times. It's 3 times around. Because you do 1.5 in the positive direction and 1.5 in the negative direction. But you may not hit all the answers. Well, we'll see. All right. Oh, but it's all 4 quadrants. Okay, all 4 quadrants. Are you okay with this? All right. So all 4 quadrants, what's our first, that's our step 1. What's our step 2? Acute angle 3 theta is sine of 60. That's right. Okay. Draw a little diagram. All 4 quadrants, 60, 60, 60, 60. And you can draw 2 of them if you want. One for the positives and one for the negatives if you want. Okay, in case it gets messy. So here are my positive angles and these are going to be my negative angles. All right, let's go. Let's name the positive ones. 3 theta equals, what do we got? We've got to go around 1.5 times. Are we okay with that? So what do we got? 60, 120, 180 and 20 and 60 is 240, 300. If you want, you can just add, you know, for your next 2, what do I add to these? 360 plus 60 is, can I just write 420 or not? And 360 plus 120 is, thank you. They're my positive ones. Comma. My negative ones hopefully are just the negative of those. Negative 60, negative 120. So I've gone up to 540 degrees. Like, because I went, if I go to this, oh, wait. Oh, sorry. Do I include this one? What's the third one? 240. No, that goes over, doesn't it? What's that one plus 360? 600, it's out of the range. You got it? We don't go to the next one. Because we know it's only 1.5 turns anyway. Are you okay with that? 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. But then we go 4, 5, 450. What's this one? 540. You stop at 540. And this one, negative 60, negative 120, negative 240. Got it? Negative 300, negative 360, and another negative 60 is negative 420. And it looks like they're going to be the same, negative 480. You okay? Look, negative 60, negative 120, negative 240, negative 300. Negative 360 and another negative 60 is negative 420. Negative 360 and negative 120 is negative 480. So therefore theta equals. So that was, are you good with those? Negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360, and we keep going. What are my answers? Divide by 3. 20, 40, 80, 100. Look, we went up by 20, 40, 20. What's that? 140, 160. And just do the negatives. Negative 20, negative 40, negative 80, negative 100, negative 140, and negative 160.